There was a man named Thomas who lived in a bustling city, constantly overwhelmed by the weight of his problems. His business was failing, his relationships were strained, and every morning felt like waking up to a mountain he couldn't climb. He had consulted experts, read countless books, and sought advice from successful people, yet nothing seemed to work. The more solutions he tried, the more complicated his life became. One rainy evening, while walking through an old part of town, Thomas noticed a small cobbler shop he had never seen before. The warm light from inside drew him in, and he found an elderly man sitting peacefully, repairing a worn-out shoe with steady hands. The cobbler looked up and smiled, his eyes twinkling with a wisdom that seemed to pierce through Thomas's troubled soul. Without being asked, the old man gestured to a chair beside him and said, "You carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, young man. Sit, rest for a moment." Thomas sat down, and before he knew it, he was pouring out his heart to this stranger. He spoke about his failing business, the loans he couldn't repay, the friends who had turned their backs on him, and the fear that paralyzed him every single day. The cobbler listened without interruption, his hands never stopping their work on the shoe. When Thomas finally fell silent, exhausted from his confession, the old man held up the shoe he had been repairing. It was torn in multiple places, the sole was damaged, and the leather was cracked. "Do you see this shoe?" the cobbler asked. "When people bring me shoes like this, they often say it's beyond repair. They see 10 different problems, 10 different tears, and they feel hopeless. But do you know what I see? I see one problem at a time. First, I fix this tear. Then, I move to the sole. Then, I treat the leather. I don't try to fix everything at once. I simply take one stitch, then another, then another. And before long, the shoe is whole again." Thomas looked at the shoe, then at his own life, and something shifted inside him. He had been trying to solve everything simultaneously, attacking his problems like a warrior fighting on multiple fronts, exhausting himself in the process. He had forgotten the simple truth that every complex problem is just a collection of smaller, simpler problems. That night, Thomas went home and made a list. Instead of writing, "Save my business," he wrote, "Call 3 potential clients tomorrow." Instead of "Fix all my relationships," he wrote, "Apologize to my brother." The next morning, Thomas made those 3 calls. 2 didn't answer, but 1 did, and that 1 call led to a small contract. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He called his brother, and though the conversation was awkward, it ended with a promise to meet for coffee. Each day, Thomas focused on one simple action, one small solution. He stopped obsessing over the enormity of his challenges and started celebrating the tiny victories. Within weeks, his business began to stabilize. Within months, his relationships started to heal. The mountain that once seemed impossible to climb was being conquered one step at a time. A year later, Thomas returned to the cobbler's shop, carrying a brand new pair of shoes as a gift. But the shop was empty, and the neighbors told him the old man had passed away months ago. Some said he had been there for decades, others claimed the shop appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Thomas never knew the truth, but it didn't matter. The cobbler had given him something more valuable than answers. He had given him a new way of seeing. As Thomas walked away from the empty shop, he smiled, remembering the old man's words. Every problem in life, no matter how complicated it seems, has a simple solution. Not because the solution is easy, but because the path forward always begins with one simple step, one stitch at a time, one day at a time, one choice at a time. And if you keep taking those simple steps, eventually you'll look back and realize you've traveled further than you ever thought possible. The secret isn't in finding the perfect solution. The secret is in starting with the simplest one, right where you are, with what you have today.